This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. And welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard. Real privileged to be with you again today. Today, we are wrapping up our two-part series on storytelling. Last episode was part one. Today's part two. Of two different types of folks, two different types of companies that are doing different types of storytelling, but there's also a lot of connectivity there, a lot of synergy there, and value there that we can all gather from these experts we have on the show about how to brand not only ourselves individually, but our companies and the things that are important to us, how to tell our stories, how to preserve those things, and how to connect other people to that so we can continue to provide value to others and continue to make the world a better place in the ways that we can do that. And no better place to do that than with you and your story, because you're unique, you're different, your company is unique and different, and people need to know that, want to learn that. And so today, we're wrapping up our series on storytelling. Today's about unleashing your influence. Okay. You have influence. How do we tap into that? How do we maximize that? How do we create a powerful brand that no one will forget? Well, today we're going to learn all about that from one of the world's leading experts. Today, we have the honor and privilege of having Emma Donovan on our show. Let me tell you some things about Emma. She's an amazing lady, all the way from South Africa. If you listen to her talk here in a minute, you'll pick up on the accent there. It's really cool. Emma is the founder, CEO, brand strategist at a company called Dapper. They provide marketing and branding to help businesses create and tell their authentic stories so they can achieve their greatest potential. Emma, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you for that introduction. It's a great way to kick it off.
Well, all the way from South Africa, tell us a little bit about what it's like to live and work in South Africa.
So I feel incredibly lucky to be based in Cape Town, South Africa. It's got a real mix of kind of raw, authentic Africa with some of the, I guess, sort of benefits of living somewhere like the States, like you do, where we have incredible restaurants and places to travel. So it's got a really sort of lovely mix to it. I think it's also got a really strong entrepreneurial culture, which I really love being part of. And again, it's got a kind of global influence with people from all over the world choosing to call it home.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny when you talk to people that maybe never have been there before, that people think, "Oh, that's South Africa." Yeah, like you're walking to this like grocery store and there's like lions and elephants walking around and all this kind of stuff. Is it like that, or is that stuff away from the city? Like what's kind of the day in the life there of you? Because people
Yeah.
think of like all the wild animals there.
So I think that's definitely out of the cities. We have a little bit of wildlife, so there's some Cape leopards on our mountains and caracals, but for the most part, it's just kind of domestic cats and dogs, and kind of I guess similar to what you'd have at home. But the kind of day to day life, I think we've got really beautiful summers. So typically like today, it's about 30 degrees. I live 5 minutes from Table Mountain and about half an hour from the beach. So in terms of lifestyle, it really is an outdoor culture. And then a couple of hours away, you get the beautiful game parks and the real wildlife, which is absolutely worth a visit.
Yeah, I think that was 30 degrees Celsius, right?
Yes.
Okay, a little bit different. People hear 30 degrees. I'm like, that's kind of cold. Like, but not in Celsius. It's actually pretty warm and beautiful. I have not had the privilege, in my world travel, haven't had the opportunity to be in Cape Town, but that is on my bucket list, and it's bubbling up to the top here very very soon. So hopefully we can stay connected and maybe catch up when we pay a visit. But great to have you on the show. You're doing such amazing work out there with storytelling and marketing and branding, which wow, what an incredible place to be in, right? So there's, according to the experts, Emma, between 5 and 10,000 impressions each individual is being exposed to every day. That's a lot. How in the world do people, whether they're an individual contributor, an individual consultant, or a major company, how do you break through all of that? Tell us a little bit about your business and what you do and how you help people stand out and get out of that congested, red ocean of almost 10,000 things that we're exposed to every day.
Sure. Yeah, I mean that stat gets me every time. It's a crazy amount we're exposed to. I often compare it to if you're in a shopping mall and you have that sense of fatigue of just walking around just from the number of sort of faces you see. And I think the same can apply in our digital world where we just bombarded with information all the time. And I think, a core pillar of what we do is how do we create space? So, create space for our clients to show up in an authentic way, but for them to really think about how do they want to leave their mark? What does that look like? And how do they stand out? So, instead of kind of competing or being in a very competitive space, how do they step out and just sort of own their story in a way that's more authentic and impactful? And I think
Hmm.
one of the ways to do that is to really go like, who is my audience and where are they? There's this pressure to be everywhere and putting out content all the
Mm.
time. But if it's not reaching the right people, then I think the your influence is can be limited by that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So when you talk about being authentic, do you feel things out there in the market aren't authentic? Do you think they're kind of gimmicky or salesy, or like I guess what's your definition of authentic and how that compares to the world we live in?
Absolutely. So for me, a big part of authenticity is being comfortable in your skin and being
Mm,
vulnerable enough to share your story. And I guess tying into your theme of storytelling is it's very easy to curate a story, to put together something that sounds impressive, but if it's not authentic to you, it's going to be tiring. You're going to be wearing a mask, you're going to be making sure you don't trip up on your story whereas if it's aligned to who you really are, the sort of essence of who you are in your brand, it's a lot easier to lean in with energy and with lightness and to have that
mm,
authenticity. So that's a big part of why we think it's important and work with clients. What we say is, how do you not necessarily remove the whole mask of that maybe persona or professional brand you portray, but how do you just lower it slightly, peek over the top, and give people a little insight into who you really are?
yeah. Well, that's powerful. We were having a discussion at our church over this weekend about how people present themselves, to in a certain way. Well, on social media, whether you're talking in the coffee shops or whatever, there's this need. I don't know. You can call it imposter syndrome. You can call it whatever you want to call it, but there's this need for people more and more in this day and age to project something bigger or stronger or better than what really may be there, right? They're trying to, I guess, like keep up or not look like they're not as good as other people or whatever. And I think social media has had just a powerful impact on that, but that is tiring. I talk to, as a business coach, I talk to business leaders all the time. And man, one of the biggest things they go through is how to decompress, how to not be tired. One of the things we talk about is, well, what's creating that stress? What's creating you from being tired? What's keeping you up at night? And what do you keep thinking about? And it is this constant need to be out there, this constantly like of missing out. Or are you seeing that with your client base? Like what are the top trends that you're coming across?
Absolutely. We often work with clients around keeping an energy journal where we say reflect
Hmm.
on the last week, month, year. The time frame depends on the context of the conversation, but what's draining you and what's energizing you. And it's really about, again, getting them to lean into what gives them energy, because you can show up so much better for your team, your clients, for potential clients, for whoever it is that you're holding that space for, if you have the energy. And you touched on imposter syndrome, which is absolutely a trend. I was so surprised when we first started Dapper. All these brilliant leaders were coming to me with imposter syndrome. And what I realized is it shows up for most of us, just in different ways. And it
Hmm.
often is just a case of building that confidence, having those proof points that like demonstrate your expertise, or why you're ready to take the next step in your career or your brand journey. And I think another trend is that you also touched on it, that feeling like you need to keep up, but that you're on a bit of a treadmill. So we really encourage clients to take a step back and focus on quality, not quantity. So you don't need to be on every platform. You don't need to be posting every day. It's really not who shouts the loudest, but who creates value, because that creates a ripple effect. And that's
Yeah.
ultimately what we're going for, is that dropping a tiny stone into the middle of a pond and just seeing that lovely ripple and like influence spreading.
Yeah. Do you find that if people can get clear on what is authentic for them and they can be consistent with that. They say in marketing, your two most important things about any kind of marketing you do is consistency and frequency, right? And I think people get frequency confused with quantity, right? Oh, I've got to be posting 2-3 times a day. Like, no, frequency can be once a week or twice a week. It doesn't have to be a large volume, but you do it in a consistent manner. What are your thoughts on that?
Completely agree. And I would add that the platforms you choose to be on is really important with that strategy. So if you're only creating content for your own platforms, you are limited to the size of your network. Whereas if you have an article published in a magazine, if you are interviewed on a radio station or a podcast, it's just, again, that ripple effect of reaching a much broader audience. So you may
Ah,
spend the same amount of time and energy on that article or that conversation, but it can have a much greater reach than if you did that, for example, just on your own YouTube channel or your own LinkedIn profile.
yeah, totally agree. So, Emma, here's something that I see a lot. People lack clarity. They think they have clarity. You ask a couple of questions deeper than the surface, and you discover they don't have clarity. Um, if you don't have clarity in who you are, what you do, why you do it, especially, and what differentiates you, that kind of like the in starting tapping this authenticity. How do you expect to be successful? So in your line of work, I mean, you're in a marketing company, right? You could be doing billboards, you can be doing TV and radio ads, you can be doing a lot of different kinds of marketing, but you're specializing in storytelling. So how do you connect with people? How do you get them to get down on that authentic level of peeling back that onion, really going deep and being able to get them comfortable with that brand, with that authenticity and moving that forward? That must be incredibly difficult.
Difficult, but something that we just love the challenge. I'm so glad you asked that question, because our mission is to empower leaders and future leaders through self discovery and brand development. So that self discovery piece really needs to come first. And we love to work with the leader themselves rather than the company brand when we start the process. So we take our clients through a 6 month process where they really dig deep into what matters and how they want to show up. So it's
Mm.
translating the essence of who they are to a professional brand which they can share with the world. And I think that for me is the most important piece of the puzzle, because if you get that story right, it's very easy for the rest to follow. you mentioned whether it's a billboard or an advert or an article, like whatever it is, if you can have that golden thread that ties it together, it's going to be so much easier for your audience to relate to. So that's probably my favorite part of the process, is just getting people to, it's really going back to basics. I think something, if I use myself as an example, I recently had a few sessions with a coach where he challenged me on my vision for my life and the company. And he said, I feel like you just say the same thing you've been saying, but when did you last stop and go, is this aligned to where I'm at in my life? And I really appreciated that, being challenged. I obviously get to do it a lot on the other side of the table, but to just, again, create space for myself and reassess and go back to my values and, my purpose and what I'm really working towards, because it's easy to have the shiny object syndrome, veer off path, uh,
Uh,
either in an exciting way and get distracted, or to just get weighed down. Life is, there's a
yep.
lot, so it's having someone to hold you accountable, I think, is a really important piece of it, which we again love doing with clients. But it can be a friend, it can be a colleague, it can be a partner. It's really just knowing where you're going and then someone saying, are we still on track?
Love it. Absolutely agree. So let's break down. You talk about the process. Break down for folks. If I'm a business owner out there, a business leader, company executive, and we're rebranding, or we're starting out from scratch, or we are entering new markets, or whatever the reason may be, and we feel we may need to tell the story different. We want to stand out amongst the crowded red sea of congested competitive space that everybody's fighting for out there. What's the process? Like if you were to start working with me or some other business owner, what's that process? What is that experience like that people can expect when they work with you and go through this journey together?
So, if I start by just touching on a few of our values, I think that sort of explains our approach. One is that we love to cultivate joy. So, we want the process to be fun. Again, I think people have a lot of responsibility, they have a lot of very serious things in their life. So, I think brand is something you can really play with and have fun with. And I think another thing for us is to keep it simple. So, it's a process that can be taken at face value, which is too simple, like equating a brand to a logo, for example, whereas a logo is just one of your like visual brand assets. Or it can become this complex, convoluted process that is just overwhelming. So, depending on the business stage, we'll adapt the process. But we love to, as I mentioned, start with the founders' brands or leadership teams' brands, and then find synergy with the company brand. So, what are the values? What's the story? What is the vision that we're working towards? And then, very importantly, who is the audience that we're talking to? So, combining that lens of what does the company stand for, what makes them stand out, and what will resonate with the audience? What is the pain point that we are able to solve? What is the difference we can make in that customer or user's journey or experience? And then we love the visual side of branding. So that will be creating all the digital assets, the logos, the signage, like everything like that. But equally important is that storytelling. So having key messaging documents, adapting content for websites, profiles, for social media bios, for speaker profiles. So really taking, again, that essence of the company and making sure that each touch point is consistent but tailored. So it is right for the platform, right for the audience, and hopefully has a sort of timeless quality to it, that it's not something you need to go and change every 5 minutes, which speaks to that getting the foundation right. If you jump in too late in the process and say, oh, we need to get an advert out tomorrow, you run the risk of then having to repeat the process rather than refine it, which I think is important. It's not static, it's ever evolving, but hopefully small tweaks rather than having to reinvent the wheel too often.
Yeah. Well, anytime you're in reactive mode, you're never in a good place. If you're reacting to a post and you're reacting to something you feel you need to do just to put something out there and get in front of people and just you're just throwing stuff out there to quote unquote be active or to feel like you're contributing or doing something to get somebody's attention. There's a lot of interesting people and they'll go out and do all kind of crazy stuff just to try to get attention. They'll put animals in videos with their company and, just to draw attention, but it's very reactive. Anytime you're reactive, you're really not in the best place, right? Well, some of the best advice I was given one time many years ago when it comes to marketing and branding is always honor your past. That connects to who you are, your story, and how to like blend that together. And boy, that was some of the best advice, at least at that time, that I needed to hear. As I was creating my
Mm.
coaching business many years ago, as you can see the logo behind me with there's a silver and a blue circle with like an arrow at the top, and it's called Soar Higher. Well, I have a military background. I was in the Air Force, and so aviation is a big part of my background. Being an entrepreneur, grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and so a lot of these things that are in my brand are really authentic to me. I've lived it, I've breathed it, and so in coaching, I'm trying to, take people to a bigger place, a better place, accomplish something they may be struggling with. They have constraints, barriers, whatever that may be. And so the soar higher kind of connects on that level, but it also connects from my background being in aviation, right? And so that particular logo, I am the blue line going up with the arrow thing at the top. The silver are my clients, and we kind of are kind of together through this journey, right? And so one of my folks, years ago in Mark says, we the whole wingman thing, like you're a business wingman, and when they said that, it really hit. And that's true. And so I am flying right next to other business owners. I'm kind of their co-pilot. They're flying, they're making the decisions, they're doing those things, but I'm making sure they get from point A to point B efficiently and they avoid the storms and they may avoid mistakes and we don't run into mountains and birds and all kind of stuff that you can fly into because when you're growing and evolving, it's like going from flying a Cessna to flying an F-22 fighter jet. Like things are coming at you faster. You have to make faster, better decisions. In business, the more you grow, the more you evolve. And so that was really important to me. I just wanted to, share an authentic,
Mm.
transparent story from my perspective to maybe connect some things for folks out there listening to this. Is that boy that really I had to slow down and connect that, really dig in and connect. And I didn't figure it out on day one. I had people helping me and driving me through that and really solidifying that business wingman and the soar higher stuff. Even the podcast is soar higher. It's got an aviation theme to it, right? Because people connect to that. People,
Absolutely.
see that as authentic and genuine, and I'm consistent with that. And that was huge for me. When you take people through this process and they come out the other side, what's different
So
at
some
the end of that process?
if I just reflect on how you shared that story, I think it's a nice way to answer the question in that you just came alive telling that story. You just had such authentic energy coming through. You were excited to share it. It just resonates so much with who you are and the brand you've built. And that for me is always the goal is for a client to have that feeling of they're so proud to take that brand out into the world because it just feels right. It's going back to that comfortable in your skin feeling. And I really appreciate that you touched on you didn't get it on the first day because I think by
Mm-mm.
nature we typically quite impatient and we like, well, what's my name? What's my brand name and what does it stand for? And I want it now. And I think that the magic is in the process, it's in the conversations, it's connecting the dots. Like you said, it's drawing on your past, it's understanding your vision and where do those collide and align. So it's yeah, it can be a frustrating process, I think, for people who haven't been through it before. It's not a pick it off the shelf or, click your fingers and it's done. So I think investing in the process, trusting the process, going in with an open mind. And I think something that's important is that space to play, to explore different ideas, to really figure out where you're going with it and why is part of the beauty of it. And then yeah, just leaving clients not just with the energy and the excitement, but really practical assets. So,
Yeah.
your logo in all the right formats and an animated logo or wherever it's going to be, if it's going to be embossed onto something, or just thinking about like, again, who's your audience? Like, how important is it? The like texture, the application of the brand. So just making sure they kind of set to go out into the world with everything they need is an important part of what they get from it.
Yeah. I think that's so important. Um, because that at the end of the day, and this is my opinion, you feel free to argue or disagree or agree to disagree, however you want to do it. At the end of the day, isn't marketing, isn't business really about building trust?
100%. Trust and relationships.
Nobody's going to buy anything from you if they don't trust you, right?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And it's something when you asked a question earlier around how authentic are brands in the market, and I think that for me is a differentiator between the ones that are authentic versus just sort of more generic and just selling something as opposed to telling their story. And I think that there's been a shift in the last few years of consumers wanting to know what the brand stands for, who's
Yeah.
behind it, what the process is to get that product to the aisle or the online shopping cart.
Yeah. So I think if you're out there listening to the show, here's an important question to ask yourself. Am I trustworthy? Do people trust me? Is my brand trusted? Is my company trusted? Is anything about my marketing, my brand, my story, my whatever, and any and everything around you and your company and what you're doing, is it trusted? If I went out to the, old jaywalking, like Jay Leno used to walk around the streets and just ask people, hey, do you know about Company X? What do you think about Company X? Are they trustworthy? Do you like them? Would you recommend them? Like what's the most, what's top of mind for you when you think about this company and trust? Like, what would they say? Have you ever thought about that? And if you don't have really clear, definitive answers, maybe you need to slow down. In business, sometimes we have to slow down in order to speed up. And I think slowing down and asking some of those kind of key questions is really crucial to authenticity, to truth. Because if your brand isn't trusted, it's probably because there's a lack of truth or knowledge or something in around it that ties back to your story, your why. One of the most um, viewed TED Talks out there is Simon Sinek and his talk on the why. People buy the why, not the what or the how. They buy the why. He draws this big, you know, uh, looks like a dartboard or bullseye on this white piece of paper. It's very powerful. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's powerful. It underscores what Emma is talking about and what Emma's doing every day. So Emma, tell us about the storytelling. So you talked a little bit about the process, but what makes a good story? What are the things you're really looking to bring out of the story? What's the goal at the end of the story? Not just to have a logo or, something that's recognizable and cute or pretty or whatever, but really what are the most important things about a story and how to tell the story?
So, a big one is finding your brand voice. And that comes down to your
Mm.
point earlier around consistency, is if you don't use the same like style and way of talking, that can create a lack of trust because it's not consistent. And it often happens if you have multiple founders of a business and they each kind of speaking on behalf of the brand. You've got to like really give thought to their own brand, their professional brand tone versus the company tone, and how you create that synergy in the company tone. It can happen naturally, but sometimes it just needs a little bit of fine tuning. And then thinking about your language. Is it formal? Is it conversational? Is there some humor in there? And I often have clients say, well, I can't bring my like funny or cheeky side into my professional brand. And I say, of course you can, because that will make it stand out. So I think that is, yeah, a really important piece is how do you talk to friends around a barbecue, around a dinner table? Like that is your natural tone, hopefully. And how do you translate that into a business context? Giving examples and sharing stories is huge. So, sharing from experience rather than giving advice is a big part of our approach. But I think that can be applied to storytelling. And that if you can give an example and how you showed up, how you interacted with a situation, you're giving again like a real life example. I think giving statistics is great. You did that right at the beginning of the podcast. I think it helps set the scene. I think it's a way to give credibility to a story. So to say, this is my lens on it, this is, what I believe, or here's a story to explain it, but this is what the statistics say, this is what the research shows. So blending that more statistical or factual lens with something that is more engaging and may resonate with your audience. And then a last point is to weave in some of your passions and interests outside of your profession. So sports, a great example that often works well, is just to look at things that you are excited and passionate about and drawing learnings or parallels between those two worlds. So yeah, just
Wow.
just a few tips. I could go on and on that question, but hopefully those are some thought starters.
Awesome. Loving it. And absolutely right. I mean, you are so spot on, which is why you're one of the top folks out there doing what you do. I can clearly see that here. Emma, what makes a good story? Give us an example of a really good, customer you worked with or a brand out there or something that you think is a really good example of a good story. And then tell us maybe one that's maybe not such a good story. We don't need to obviously name names or anything
Yeah.
like that, but I just want to give folks an opportunity to kind of compare and contrast. So if they see some things or hear some things in accordance to what your thoughts are, they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, my stuff's not that way," or "Yeah, I can resonate with that. That's either good or maybe not so good."
So I think a sort of global example that comes to mind, which is used a lot, but I think for good reason, is Patagonia. So I think
Mm,
their brand positioning and their story is really strong and authentic. So that's one that I think is great if you just want like a sort of case study that's well documented in terms of a brand being built. There's a lovely South African brand which has a very similar ethos to Patagonia called Sealand Gear, which is worth having a
mm,
look. Yeah, I had the opportunity to work with one of the founders, and just it's an incredible story, but it's a brand where they really put their heart into it. So they tell stories with, sharing examples of what their team is doing. They have a lot of video content, which again is really interactive and a way to get to know the people. They do incredible collaborations with other local businesses and international businesses. So then there's that
mm.
opportunity to leverage each other's stories, which I also think is a great strategy. And then in terms of businesses that maybe miss the mark, it's a harder one to answer. There are lots. I think a recent example, a recent example for me is one of our big mobile phone companies, and I've been needing to change a phone contract, and they've got a very corporate brand, so it's difficult to get a sense of whether you align with them, just because there's not much storytelling around the brand. And then I think a really important thing is talk to your customers where they are. So they keep phoning me and I'm in meetings and I say, please email me. So it's a very small thing, but it affects my impression of their story. Is
Mm.
communicate in a way that your customers understand. And as a sort of, a big company like that, they're not going to be able to get that right for everyone. But if you've got a professional client base, what are the platforms that are going to work for them? How much detail should there be in communication? How easy is it to interact with your brand? So very different industries, but I think the same principles apply. Is that, are you talking to your customers where they are? Are
Mm.
you building trust? Are you breathing life into your brand? I think that's such a key thing. You can be a very corporate company, but still have a personality. Or you can be a startup that has no structure, but still create a sense of trust, and that in your niche, you know what you're doing. And you aren't pretending to have, a global footprint and 10 years experience. You are a young business and you're doing things in the best way you can, and building that authentic trust.
Amazing. Powerful. Very powerful. I think of, like, Coca-Cola, one of the biggest brands, I think internationally, certainly here in America, is Coca-Cola, the soft drink company, right? Nothing wrong with any of the other, you know, Coca-Cola or any other soda, whatever, makers out there. They're all good. They're all good and well, if but it goes back to your taste and what you like, of course. But one thing that I like about Coke is they're really good at telling the story. When you see their commercials, they'll have like Christmas time, holidays. There's this theme of family and just coming together, and it's not about the drink; it's
Yeah.
about the experience, right? I think is really, really powerful. And when there's also uh, a company that a very well known international company that sells beer. I'm not going to name the name because I don't want to get sued down the road, but they used to be good at telling a story. They used to be good at doing things a certain way. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, over the past couple years, they've gotten off of that. They've aligned on political things. They've aligned on controversial things, and it's confused people. They don't know
Mm,
where this brand stands and where it's going and why. Like, it's just there's too much noise, too much stuff around it. It's a beer company, man. Beer's about hanging out and partying and sports and just fun and chilling and tailgating, and just it's about positive energy and just having fun, having a good time. But yet
yeah.
all of the stuff around it was kind of negative, and it was,
Mm,
I think it had good intent, but just how it was put out there and how they went through that process, and it took them way off course. And I think it confused people, and as a result, they've lost a lot of business and followers. There are people I know that will not drink that beverage just because of that. If that never would have
yeah.
happened, they still would be drinking that beverage today. And there's a lot of people out there. And so I want you to talk about, as we kind of wrapping up this really great episode, Emma, talk about storytelling and how this benefits people. So we've talked about the process and some value and kind of what that's like, some good examples, maybe some not so good examples. And if I'm thinking about this and I really want to get deeper, and I'm not really, really ingrained in this to the level that you're talking about here on the show, and I'm thinking about doing that, like, what are some of the benefits people are getting at it? Are their businesses growing? Have you know, 20x somebody's bit, like what are all the benefits and things that you've helped people achieve as a result of all this great work?
So I think the first one, which we've spoken a bit about, is clarity of purpose. I think it's
Yeah.
hard to explain how incredible that can be and I don't think you ever have complete clarity. I think you move closer to clarity. And I think that's quite an important distinction, is you
Mm.
are gaining more and more clarity as you work on your brand and your story. I think another one we've talked about is the credibility and trust. Again, it's really hard to put a price on that, but it's
Yeah.
huge. It's being able to stand out from the crowd, and it's being able to own your story, because your story is out there. If you Google yourself, you will find all sorts of things about yourself, your company, and you maybe haven't chosen that narrative. Whereas by proactively sharing your story, you have an opportunity to shape how the world sees you. So I think that is a big one. And in terms of return on investment, the client I mentioned, who's one of the founders of Sealand Gear, I love using his testimonial to demonstrate the point of how it can have a positive return on investment in terms of generating business. So by investing in his brand, he said to us a few months later, it just opened so many doors for conversations, and not necessarily clients, but strategic partners or just opportunities to really grow the business. And I think it's about thinking bigger than acquiring clients when you're working on your brand, to what is your career progression, what is your company's progression, and how does having an authentic story take you a step closer to that. So again, not a tick
Mm.
box. It's something that evolves and has so much potential that is untapped, and you will only really realize what that's going to do in your personal situation once you dive in. But certainly a way to welcome opportunities in an authentic way.
Well said. Oh my gosh, that was so well articulated. And thank you so much for that. I think that really kind of underscored the whole conversation today. Quite frankly, it's if you want to be relevant and continue to be relevant in business today, you have to get better at telling your story. There's value there. Share it. I think the more you share the story, the more comfortable you get in that space, the more confidence you get, the more opportunities open up, more doors open up you didn't even know existed. It can take you to a whole nother level for which you've never even probably even thought about, that will allow you to be
Mm.
trusted. And in today's world, with all of the scammers and all of the robocallers and all of the people hitting you up on LinkedIn and email and just spamming the heck out of you, you know, nobody knows who to trust. Nobody knows who's legit anymore, right? It used to be a lot clearer. Now it's just a congested sea of people pounding on your door, digitally or physically, just wanting to partner, wanting to sell you stuff, and you come across that way until people get your trust, earn the trust. And Emma, you're helping people really authentically do that. Um, Emma, thank you so much for being on the show today. You're such an incredible lady doing some amazing things for people that really truly matter. This is like in the trenches stuff that really truly matters more than anything, really. And so if people want to, talk with you, learn more, connect with you, potentially work with you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Thank you, Jason. It's been, yeah, such a pleasure having this conversation. I always love to connect with listeners directly, so please find me on LinkedIn, Emma Donovan Dapper. And we've got a little surprise for you in the show notes. So that will take you through to our website. And yeah, just something to say thank you for listening. And if you are interested to work with us, we would love to connect there. So you can go directly to becomedapper.com or just head on down to the show notes.
Awesome. As always, we always put everybody's contact information in the show notes. Sometimes people are listening to this show when they're exercising, when they're driving back and forth to work, and all kind of different things, and they may not be able to take notes or write things down or whatever. Don't worry about it. It's in the show notes. Click in there on all of the major podcast channels that are out there and social media handles. We're on all of those for your convenience. So thank you again. Such a wonderful conversation, such a great person. Loved having you on the show. Next week is going to be another great show. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to lead authentically, which piggybacks on today's show. How to communicate with others in ways where they will follow you anywhere without question. Powerful show ahead. Don't want to miss it. Hope you all have a great and wonderful week. See you next time.